Stephen Colbert took center stage, microphone in hand, his typical sneer on his face. Tariffs, according to Donald Trump, represent economic freedom, but I see them as risking unprecedented economic devastation. The 1930s recession is calling. Who wants to purchase an iPad that costs more than a house? The crowd shouted with amusement and applause echoed loudly. The speech circulated immediately on social media. Conservative viewers reacted furiously online, defending Trump, calling Colbert a liar, and claiming tariffs will rescue America. Colbert sneered, peering directly into the camera. I dare Trump's press secretary, Karoline Leavitt, to appear on The Late Show and explain the tariff fiasco. Is she willing to confront me, or will she hide behind the White House podium? Before getting into the tale, leave a comment about where you're viewing from, and don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on the newest stories. Karoline Leavitt stood in the White House office, clutching her phone firmly and staring at the television, which was repeating Stephen Colbert's monologue. The claim that Trump risks catastrophic economic devastation, as well as the challenge, "Does she have the guts to face me?" spread like wildfire on social media, eliciting a fierce response from conservatives. Her squad hurried in, and the air was heavy with anxiety. Mike, the media expert, piped up, "Karoline, it's a trap. Colbert will make you a laughingstock on his stage." His crowd despised Trump. Sarah agreed, "He'll flood you with cheap jokes, so let Fox News handle it." Leavitt whirled, her eyes piercing. "Nay? If I back down, he'll claim Trump is terrified. I'm not going to let Colbert win that easily." Karoline Leavitt left the White House office and climbed into the vehicle, equipped with crisp statistics and an unwavering desire to meet Stephen Colbert on his own stage at The Late Show. Karoline Leavitt appeared from The Late Show wings, stage lights illuminating her scarlet jacket and steely gaze. The lively music faded and some drinks rang out, but she did not move. Stephen Colbert took center stage, microphone in hand, and a familiar sneer on his face. Karoline Leavitt really showed up, Colbert added, his tone sarcastic and provocative. Applause broke out again, mingled with laughing. Colbert waved her closer, his eyes gleaming with mirth. "Karoline, welcome to The Late Show. Prepare to defend Trump's economic calamities. I refer to it as Trump's danger of unprecedented economic devastation. The recession of the 1930s is on the horizon." Leavitt took a step forward, addressing him, her voice icy and piercing over the hubbub. "Stephen, you say it's a catastrophe. I call that a victory. I am here to prove you incorrect, and I will do it right now." Scattered applause erupted from one corner. Clearly, Trump supporters are among the progressive throng. Colbert lifted his eyebrow, faking astonishment. "A win? You mean a success in turning iPhones into luxury items? Only Trump can afford it, right?" The room erupted in laughter, with whistles ringing out. Leavitt did not flinch, and her voice was steady. "If you want to joke about iPhones, that's okay. But are you aware that Canada imposes a 250% tax on American dairy? Other nations pour cheap products, destroying our businesses. Trump is only fighting back to safeguard millions of American jobs. Something you don't understand since all you read are comic scripts." She aimed directly at him, her eyes burning. Colbert inclined his head and smirked. "Oh, Karoline, I don't need to study economics to know that Trump's tariffs will raise milk costs. Thank you, Trump. My viewers will soon have to sell their automobiles to purchase milk." Laughter erupted again, but Leavitt would not allow him dominate the topic. She drew closer, her voice drowning out the background sounds. "You're mistaken, Stephen. Tariffs created 2 million additional employment. Steel, agriculture, and manufacturing. That's actual data, not cheap punchlines. Do you want Americans to rely on China's cheap commodities indefinitely? That is the actual calamity." A throng cheered wildly, apparently moved by her enthusiasm. Colbert lifted his hand, urging the audience to settle down. 2 million jobs? Sounds good until folks discover a Big Mac is suddenly more expensive than a ticket to my event. Do you have facts on increasing costs, or are you simply echoing Trump? She took a paper from her pocket and held it out in front of him. Do you want data? Tariffs have led to a 15% increase in U.S. steel output. Employees have jobs, not welfare queues. Trump protects them while you insult them for laughs. Applause from the right wing got louder, mixing with boos from the opposition. Colbert grinned, unfazed. "Karoline, you're excellent. But if tariffs are so high, why are analysts predicting a recession? 1930 was not a joke, you understand." He leaned toward the crowd, seeming to say, "She doesn't know, so don't worry." Laughter erupted again. Leavitt walked up to him, her voice as harsh as a dagger. "Do you want to bring up 1930? These models are out of date. Trump has a contemporary plan. What is your catastrophe claim based on? Your jokes or unfair headlines?" She pointed to him. You're not an economist, Stephen. You are merely a clown reading a script. Colbert laughed and raised his hands. A clown reads a screenplay. Thank you for the compliment, Karoline. But at least my script does not increase milk costs. She turned to face the crowd, her voice booming. He laughs about milk prices but refuses to acknowledge that Trump's initiatives keep millions of Americans employed. He wants you laughing, but I want you working. Who would you pick? Colbert waved his hand, attempting to brighten the atmosphere. Okay, Karoline. You are ferocious. But can you explain why everything is more costly, or is it also due to Trump's victory? Levitt shot back without hesitation. Price increases are the cost of economic freedom. Would you prefer we depend on China and allow them to govern us? Trump says no, and I agree. The conservatives applauded again, this time louder than before. She locked eyes with Colbert. You call it historical economic damage? I call it protecting America. What side are you on, Stephen? Colbert waved his hand, attempting to restore the mood. Patriotism. I love America enough to want to purchase milk without getting a bank loan. Do you have any statistics on average Americans, or only Trump? Levitt moved up to him, eyes blazing. Data for normal Americans show that 2 million individuals have employment rather than waiting up for aid. Trump fights for them. You ridicule them. Who is more patriotic, Stephen? Colbert smirked. Karoline. But I'm not finished yet. Levitt did not break eye contact. You will realize that neither am I. The commercial break music began and the throng continued to buzz, with some yelling more louder than before. The stage lights came back on as the commercial music faded to loud ovation mingled with whistles and cries of Karoline from the conservative corner. The mood was electrifying after round 2, with Levitt strengthening her argument with employment statistics and economic freedom. Stephen Colbert, with mic in hand and steadfast sneer, stood center stage, sharply dividing the audience. Welcome back to The Late Show. Karoline Levitt defends Trump's tariffs. She calls it patriotism. I call them Trump hazards. Historic economic harm. Who's right here, he said, his caustic tone piercing through the audience's raucous laughing. Levitt stood opposite him, her eyes angry, still holding her data sheet, the weapon she'd used to oppose him, on display. She didn't wait for Colbert to take the lead before moving closer. Stephen, you say it's a catastrophe. I've showed you that industries are increasing. Trump defends America. What do you have except cheap jokes? The conservatives applauded and several stood up to celebrate. Colbert lifted a hand, gesturing for silence. Karoline, I have a surprise for you. He looked to the wings and waved. Please welcome economist Dr. Rachel Evans, a middle-aged lady with her hair pulled up who strode onto the platform with confidence. Applause broke out along with a few boos from the conservative wing. Colbert smirked. Dr. Evans studies economics at a prominent institution. She had a few comments regarding Trump's tariffs. Rachel, go ahead. Levitt cocked her head, her keen sight assessing the new opponent. But she did not waver. She challenged Colbert to bring an expert during the break. And now she was prepared to square off. Dr. Evans grabbed the microphone, her voice calm yet forceful. Thanks, Stephen. I admire your facts, Ms. Levitt, but Trump's tariffs threaten a recession. Consumer prices are risen by 10%. Exports are decreasing owing to retaliation from China and Canada. The Smoot-Hawley tariffs, which went into effect in 1930, sank world commerce. That is the true historical economic loss. Colbert laughed aloud. Thanks, Rachel. Karoline, how do you reply to that? Levitt came forward, her voice drowning out the cheers. Dr. Evans, you depend on vintage 1930s models. Trump employs a contemporary approach. Tariffs safeguard steel and agriculture, and they create millions of jobs. A 10% price increase. That is a minor payment for economic freedom. Do you want us to always bow to China? She turned to face Colbert. Do you and she have any evidence to prove Trump is wrong? The conservatives applauded, with one yelling Karoline's right. Evans responded, her tone calm. Ms. Levitt, I've got data. China's retaliatory tariffs caused a 20% decline in U.S. agricultural exports. Jobs may grow in the near term, but what about in the long run? A recession is not an old model. It is a genuine danger. Applause erupted from the progressive side. Colbert jumped in, grinning. Karoline, listen to that. 20% decline in exports, and I bet my new television can't even purchase coffee. You consider it a win? Laughter echoed across the studio. Levitt refused to back down, her voice increasing. 20% drop. You forget that China manipulates us with cheap products, killing American industries. Trump puts a stop to it. Jobs are becoming more plentiful in Ohio and Pennsylvania. Stephen, do you want to hear a joke about iPhones? I want Americans to work. Who is right here? She pointed at Evans. Your models cling to the past. Trump shapes the future. What do you have except irrational fear? Conservatives' applause erupted, drowning out the opposition's boos. Colbert lifted his hand, grinning. The future. Because of Trump's tariffs, I predict that many will sell their homes for milk. Rachel, what are your thoughts? Evans nodded. Miss Levitt, I am not inciting terror. Rising costs impacted the workers you mentioned. Tariffs are unsustainable. History demonstrates it. Karoline Levitt fired back, her tone as keen as a dagger. History. Trump rewrites history. You don't see it because you're not concerned about American workers, but President Trump is. She turned to face Colbert. You rely on her to declare it a catastrophe. I rely on facts. Colbert laughed. Facts. Karoline, I can't afford an iPad anymore. That's a catastrophe for me. Karoline moved straight up to him. Eyes blazed. You keep making jokes about iPads, but you refuse to admit Trump protects millions of American families. That is patriotism. What side are you on? Evans interjected. Miss Levitt, patriotism does not affect economics. Prices are up 10%. Exports are decreased. That is reality. This is not a joke. Levitt swung to face her, his voice furious. Reality. The reality is that Trump is maintaining employment for Americans. You want people out of work in exchange for low-cost items. I have data. What reason do you have to refute it? She held up her paper and pointed to Colbert. You're not an expert. What do you stand for except cheap punchlines? Colbert laughed aloud. Karoline, but I don't need an economics degree to realize that Americans dislike spending more. He turned to face the audience. Who wants to pay 10% more? Boos rang out, but Levitt wouldn't let him win. You asked the crowd. I questioned them, who wants to be dependent on China? Trump says no. How about you? Half the audience stood applauding while the other half booed. The studio shook. Evans attempted to speak. Miss Levitt, economics is not that straightforward. A recession poses a serious danger. Levitt shut her off. Not so straightforward. I'll make things simple. Trump defends America. You undermine it via dread. She turned to face Colbert. That's the victory. You have lost. Conservatives' applause drowned out the boos. Colbert waved his hand, attempting to restore control. Lost? Karoline, I have not lost yet. He motioned to his teammates. We're out of time. The ending music played, the crowd remained wild, with some yelling Karoline. Louder than ever. Levitt maintained eye contact and said, he's not off the hook yet. Her phone rang with a text from Trump. You're number one, smash him. Karoline, even after the break, the enthusiasm remained vibrant. Chants are ringing from the distant corner. Colbert walked out, microphone in hand. His sneer challenged her for another bout. Welcome back to the Late Show. Karoline Levitt defends Trump's tariffs. She calls it patriotism. I call them Trump hazards. Historic economic harm. Let us see who survives this round. He remarked with sarcastically, eliciting loud laughs from the audience. Levitt took a step forward, her eyes flaming, and gripped her data sheet like a blade ready to strike. Stephen, you keep ridiculing Trump, but here's the reality. Tariffs make America stronger. What more evidence do you have to refute that? She pointed directly at him. You want us to submit to other countries for cheap goods? Trump will not allow it, and neither will I. Conservatives' applause erupted. Some people stood to celebrate, drowning out the boos from the opponents. Colbert lifted his hand, gesturing for silence, his grin intact. Karoline, you're tough, but I've got a surprise in store to put your honesty to the test. He went to the wings and waved wildly. Please welcome Dr. Paul Grayson, a famous economist. A tall, silver-haired guy strode out boldly, clutching a large stack of paperwork. Colbert smirked. Dr. Grayson is a trade and economics specialist. He had a few comments regarding Trump's tariffs. Paul, go ahead. Levitt cocked her head, her piercing eyes focused on Grayson. She challenged Colbert to bring an expert during the break, and he did. But she was not terrified. She'd been prepared to deal with any assault since arriving at the White House. Grayson grabbed the microphone, his voice loud and earnest. Thank you, Stephen and Ms. Levitt. Trump's tariffs may provide short-term benefits, but the costs are high. Living expenditures have risen by 12%, while agribusiness has lost billions of dollars due to international retaliation. History shows that the 1930s smooth-hauling tariffs plunged the globe into disaster. This is clear historical economic loss. Some people nodded. That's correct, rising from the advancing side. Colbert chuckled loudly and turned to face Levitt. Karoline, listen to that. 12% cost increase, billions squandered, and a lesson from 1930. How can you counteract that? Levitt went up to Grayson, her words drowning out the clapping. Dr. Grayson, you're using history to terrify Americans. But Trump is creating a new America. Tariffs are not a hardship. They serve as a bulwark against foreign manipulation of our economy. You want us to succumb to the pressure? She turned to face Colbert. You call it a calamity. I call it strength. Aside from outmoded projections, what do you and he have to say to the contrary? Conservative applause erupted. Karoline wins with a single scream. Grayson responded, his tone cool yet fierce. Ms. Levitt, I've got genuine data. Tariffs increased material prices, causing the car sector to lose 10% of its income. Workers suffer when automobile costs skyrocket. That is not strength. It is a burden. Colbert jumped in, grinning. Karoline's income has dropped by 10%. I guess a vehicle is now more expensive than my home. That is Trump's strength. Levitt did not flinch, her voice booming. 10%. You forget that Trump protects American industry against a torrent of low-cost imports that are destroying us. Do you want a car-related joke, Stephen? I want Americans to maintain manufacturing employment. Which would you choose? She pointed at Grayson. You use numbers from biased research. Trump prioritizes Americans. You don't understand it because you're trapped behind a desk. The conservatives' applause was louder than the opposition's boos. Colbert lifted his hand, grinning. Americans first? I envision their wallets reaching rock bottom as a result of Trump's tariffs. Paul, what are your thoughts? Grayson nodded. Ms. Levitt's short-term profits do not outweigh the long-term losses. Small companies are suffering with growing prices. History is not a forecast, it is a warning. Karoline Levitt cut in aggressively. A warning? Trump transforms warnings into chances. You don't see it since you are buried in literature. Trump recognizes what the American people need. Do you want them to lose their jobs in exchange for foreign goods? I say no. She turned to face Colbert. You depend on him to declare it a disaster? I depend on reality. Colbert laughed. Reality? Reality? I'd have to sell a kidney to get any coffee this morning. That's a catastrophe for me. Karoline's eyes flashed. You ridicule coffee while ignoring Trump's efforts to keep the economy robust for millions. He wants laughter. I am fighting for your employment. Who would you pick? Grayson attempted to intervene. Ms. Levitt, economics does not operate on willpower. A recession poses a significant danger. Levitt whirled towards him. Her voice sliced like a dagger. Is this a real threat? Reality? Is Trump keeping America unbreakable? Do you want us to disintegrate under foreign pressure? I have data. Millions of people benefit from Trump's policies. What evidence do you have to contradict it? She held up her paper and pointed to Colbert. You're not an expert. Aside from clowning, what do you stand for? Grayson snapped. Ms. Levitt, willpower does not rescue economies. The danger is real. Levitt interrupted. Risk? I transform risk into triumph. Trump defends America. You and Stephen just spread uncertainty. She turned to face Colbert. Do you call it a disaster? I call that a victory. You have lost. Karoline Levitt walked off the stage. Her eyes were still burning from the searing climax. She recently squared up against Stephen Colbert and Dr. Paul Grayson, using harsh arguments about employment and patriotism to undermine Trump's allegation of unprecedented economic devastation. The studio rocked with turmoil, and she knew the conflict had left an unforgettable impression. The late show staff hurried about as she reached the backstage area. Some looked at her with a mixture of admiration and caution. Her phone buzzed constantly. She pulled it out. A text from Donald Trump is blinking. You are a star. Crush that moron. I am proud of you. Levitt offered a frigid grin. She slips the phone back into her pocket. Before she could gather her breath, Mike, the White House's media advisor, dashed up. iPad in hand. Karoline, did you see this? The media is booming. She looked at the screen. Fox News published a headline. Levitt destroys Colbert on his territory. Trump wins decisively. Mike smiled. They call you Trump's troops fantastic. But Levitt did not hurry to rejoice. She knew the opposition would not be silent. Sarah, another advisor, arrived with a stern expression, giving her a phone. Karoline, MSNBC is firing back. They believe Colbert triumphed via reasoning. Levitt just shouted and offered no ideas. Levitt skimmed the article. Her voice was chilly. Yelling? I provided them data. They don't like it too much. But I did not lose. Sarah nodded. You were as tough as nails. They do, however, want to target price increases. The public has divided. She walked out of the studio's rear entrance, where a small throng had assembled. Some Trump supporters brandished banners that said Karoline's right. Others jeered. Tariffs destroy us. Levitt halted. looking directly at them. Trump fights for you. I do too. Conservatives applauded. But one person screamed back, I can't afford milk any longer. She didn't respond. Walking to the automobile. Her stare was steadfast. The stage fight had spilled outdoors. And she realized it wasn't over. Meanwhile, in the late show dressing room, Colbert sat with his teammates. Smirk remained on his lips. He examined the video, chuckling. She's relentless. But the crowd likes me more. Writer Josh gave a nod. True. She has numbers. But you've had some chuckles. That Big Mac costs more than an airline ticket. Bits are going viral. Colbert shrugged. She's tough. I will offer her that. But I did not lose. Tariffs are unpopular with my readership. He stood, clapping. Prepare a tweet. Thank you, Karoline. At the very least, tariffs do not affect my performance tickets. The team laughed. Going to work. Using social media. The showdown video received millions of views in hours. Hashtag Karoline Veers. Colbert was trending everywhere. Trump fans posted. Karoline shattered the clown. Trump defends America. Progressives fired back. Colbert flipped it. Levitt just yelled without explaining costs. One viewer commented, she's powerful, but I'm not willing to spend 12% extra. Colbert is correct. Another wrote, Karoline is a warrior. Colbert is just kidding. The studio split was enormous, making the conflict a focal point for public debate. Levitt sat in the vehicle driving back to the White House. She opens her laptop to check responses. She browsed through. Fox News praised her as a conservative hero. While CNN was running, Colbert reveals tariff problems. Levitt is unconvincing. She grinned. Whispering is not compelling. I offered them the truth. Her phone vibrated again. Trump is phoning directly. She heard his voice booming. Karoline, you are number one. I watched everything. You smashed that moron in front of his audience. Fantastic. Levitt responded. Thank you, Mr. President. I did not let him win. Tariffs are our success. Trump laughed. That's correct. Keep on, we're winning. But she hung up. Levitt looked out the window. Her gaze were momentarily pensive. The stock market has just seen a minor fall. Some investors were concerned about China's retaliatory tariffs after her discussion. Mike joined in from the front seat. Karoline, stocks dropped somewhat. They claim it is due to trade tensions. But do not worry. Fox is pushing your story aggressively. She nodded. Good. The public needs the truth. We are not terrified of China. Nonetheless, she was aware that her victory was not without cost. Rising prices were genuine, and Colbert had made good use of them. Back in the studio, Colbert grabbed the stage to give a quick goodbye to the live crowd. He clutched the microphone, grinning. Thank you, Karoline Levitt, for attending. She's ferocious. But I still cannot afford an iPad. Thank you for watching The Late Show. The audience laughed and cheered. He turned backstage. Tell Josh. She is a worthy opponent. But I've got an audience. Tariffs do not sit well with them. Josh nodded. This clip has been going viral all week. She heated things up. But you had the upper hand. Karoline Levitt walked into the White House office. Following the media frenzy caused by The Late Show, a sense of peace has returned. She put her scarlet blazer over the chair, sitting in front of a television repeating her greatest battle with Stephen Colbert. Her voice boomed across the speakers. You call it a calamity. I call that a victory. You have lost. She had demolished Trump's record economic harm claim in front of millions. That's what mattered. Her phone vibrated faintly on the desk. A text from Donald Trump. You've made me proud. I taught that clown a lesson. She offered a frigid grin, leaning back. Her stare was firm. The stage battle was not simple. Colbert delivers scathing barbs. Dr. Grayson has contrary data. But she had stayed steadfast, hitting back hard with employment statistics and patriotism. Fox News labeled her Trump's warrior. Even if MSNBC and CNN insulted her, she knew she had won over those who believed in Trump. She looked through social media on her laptop. The YouTube clip has received millions of views. The comments are buzzing. Karoline is too powerful. Colbert couldn't handle her. Mixed with Colbert's right, Levitt did not explain pricing. She grinned, whispering, they will get it. Trump is correct. Rising consumer prices. Falling exports. Whatever Grayson and Colbert threw at her, she denied that there were any concerns. But to her, the expense justified America's independence. Trump chose her for her passion, and she had demonstrated that he had made the correct decision. Karoline vigorously claps back at Stephen Colbert. Following the claim, Trump risks causing unprecedented economic devastation, reflects a very true aspect of today's American political and social situation. Deep polarization of economic and political beliefs, and how the media influences public perception. In the narrative, Karoline Leavitt, as the White House press secretary, confronts Stephen Colbert on The Late Show to support Trump's tariffs, using employment considerations to refute allegations of past economic damage. Conversely, Colbert and Dr. Grayson emphasize increasing costs and economic threats, echoing the public's concerns over living expenses. The crowd divided, some chanting Karoline, while others boo. In addition, Fox News, MSNBC, and social media have all responded in different ways. Highlight America's vast disparity. Where each side has its own truth, few compromise. The lesson from this tale is more than simply a discussion. But how do we live and connect in a divided America? Leavitt's commitment to facts and patriotism, despite mocking, teaches personal commitment and preparedness, are critical to staying steadfast across ideological barriers. However, Colbert uses laughter to connect, reminds us that emotion and empathy are just as important in persuading. Americans today can benefit from this. Listen to all sides. Like the divided studio crowd, combine reason with experienced actuality. Do not allow social media or the news drown out the truth. Face it head on, as Leavitt did on Colbert's territory. However, have an open mind in order to understand the anxieties of others. It is unclear who won. Encourages us to reflect, not just picking sides to create a less hostile society. If you liked Karoline and Colbert's fierce showdown, subscribe to the channel to avoid missing the next great political conflicts. Thank you for watching. See you in the future video.